Who's got the glamour? Who's got glamour and value too? Ambassador, we're singing this song to you. Wait till you feel her gliding down the street. You're in the smoothest car you'll ever meet. She's got everything the public wants and more.
Hello again, and welcome to another installment of the Nash Heritage Preservation Project. And again, it's Patrick Foster reporting for duty. I've traveled this time down to Florida to visit a man that I've talked to on the phone and who I've been aware of for quite some time, but this has been a distance to come, and I've been lucky enough this year to come down and see him. The man we're going to talk to was worked for Nash and American Motors for a long time, had a tremendous career there in engineering, and this is Howard Tortle.
T-U-R-T-L-E.
Yeah.
Just like the animal.
Just like the animal. And Howard, we were talking before we got started here, and tell me again about your background. You're a Kansas boy?
Yes, I was an only child. My dad ran a drugstore in a small western Kansas town.
Mm-hmm.
He always drove Nashes because the Nash dealer was a friend of his.
Oh, okay.
So then I got out of the service, and I had been with a lot of other tech reps
Mm-hmm.
from other companies, and I saw how they were treated after the war, and I didn't think Nash would treat me that way.
Mm-hmm.
And they did.
Well, how did they treat the other reps at the other car company?
At the other car companies, they just said, well, you were fired 10 days ago, and we just didn't get around to telling you. So you can get wherever you want to, any way you can.
Yeah, so they didn't get their job back. And I thought, wasn't it they were supposed to give them their jobs back after the war?
I'm sure I don't know, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. So you decided to go check with Nash?
Yes. I decided I'd like to work for Nash. I had my engineering degree and my aircraft engine mechanics license.
Oh,
And
okay.
so after I got married, I decided I didn't want to be a flight engineer,
Mm-hmm.
which had been my goal before.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to work for Nash and started out as a night mechanic, and then to dynamometer, and then the next thing was road testing. And we went on test trips all over the U.S. when it was hot.
Now, when you started with Nash, where did you start, in Kenosha or in Detroit?
In Kenosha.
Oh, okay. An how did you know to go to the Kenosha plant versus going to Detroit?
Well, they didn't have an engineering department when I started, I don't believe.
Oh, okay, because they had moved the headquarters by 1948, was
yeah.
in Detroit on Plymouth Road.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well,
So you went out to Wisconsin from, where did you, when you got out of the Army, where were you physically? Where?
I went to northern Michigan
Uh-huh.
because I had gotten acquainted with her cousin in the service.
Oh, your wife's cousin, okay.
Right. And he had an A&E for a number of years, and at that time you had to serve a year's apprenticeship
Mm-hmm.
to a licensed A&E, or with a licensed A&E, before you could write your writtens or do your practical.
Okay, now you lost me there. What's an A&E?
Aircraft engine mechanic.
Oh, okay, all right. So you, all right, okay.
Now they call it A&P, Aircraft and Power Plant.
Yeah, okay.
So, but then that was the old term.
Uh-huh. So then you went out to Kenosha from there?
Well, I worked in Marquette, Michigan with him because that's where he had lived before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I met his cousin, my wife.
Mm-hmm.
So we were married, and then I needed a job for sure.
Oh, yeah. That'll do it.
Yeah. So we went to Kenosha, and I even worked at Montgomery Ward's as a sales clerk for a time.
Okay.
And as soon as the job opened up at Nash, which came about through my association with the local airport,
Mm-hmm.
and so I went to Nash and took a night job as a mechanic, and then moved up to dynamometer. Then the next job was well, road test.
Now, night job as a mechanic, what did a mechanic do at Nash?
Fixed cars.
Were they brand new cars that?
Well, they had a fleet of about 20
Mm-hmm.
cars. And all the powers that be had a car, not the same one all the time, but a fleet.
Oh, okay, so you kept them up.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Now, were they brand new cars that were undergoing tests, or were they just like company cars that they got because they were big shots?
They were, let's say it this way, it was about half and half.
Oh, okay.
The they had a proving ground,
Mm-hmm.
and we also ran 100,000 mile tests, where you
Oh.
take a new car off the road, I mean off the line,
Mm-hmm.
and and run it 100,000 miles, 3 shifts a day.
Wow. And now the proving grounds, if I remember right, were at Burlington, Michigan, which is
Burlington, Wisconsin.
or Wisconsin rather, which was
About 23 miles
about 22
west
miles.
of,
Yeah,
of the plant.
yeah. I remember, well, earlier in this series, I interviewed a fellow who worked at the test track, and he used to go in that big 4-door Nash car that they had. He was one of the guys who would drive up in there. So they ran these brand new Nashes, take them off the line, drove them for 100,000 miles. How long would it take to rack up 100,000 miles?
About 3 months.
Oh, okay. And the purpose of that was to test the durability?
Durability,
Oh,
exactly.
okay. How did they do?
Well, pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
One thing that always happened, after 100,000 miles, the windshield would be sandblasted.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And so they'd put in new windshields and pull the engines down and take them all apart, check them out,
Mm-hmm.
and then put them back in the fleet and sell them to employees.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah, I would imagine they must have sold them quite a bit cheaper than,
right.
yeah, because they had the, did they ever go over 100,000? Did they ever try to see what it would be like to go 100?
No, I think at about 100,000, another 1,000 afterwards mainly.
Yeah.
But
Because I don't know why, but somewhere along the line that became pretty much the standard, was 100,000 miles. A car should last about that long. And,
well, that's what they
yeah.
the powers that be decided,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it was.
Oh, okay. Now, when you went to work there, who was your supervisor?
My immediate supervisor was a man. Okay, I was a night mechanic,
Mhm.
and his name was Apple Tree, and they used to call him App
Yeah.
for Apple Tree. So I worked at that for about 3 or 4 months, and I asked for a job in dynamometer.
Now, the dynamometer, that's also to test the car, or was it to test engines?
No, it's to test engines.
Okay.
This dynamometer was.
Okay.
They have dynamometers that do test cars, but
Okay.
in fact, one of the things we did in dynamometer was to take new engines off the line,
Mm-hmm.
tear them down, inspect them for size of parts and so forth,
Mhm.
and then put them on break-in, 20 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, 60, and then run 100 hours of wide open throttle.
Mm. Was there a load on the engine, or just?
Oh, it was held down to its torque peak.
Mm-hmm.
There was no load on it.
Yeah. Wow.
And we'd run 100,000, pardon me, 100 hours.
100 hours.
Yeah. And then,
What's that equivalent in road miles, or is there an equivalent?
not that I
Oh,
really,
okay.
really know of,
Mhm.
but then they were torn down, and originally we started putting them back in cars
Mm-hmm.
that were used locally.
Wow.
But the cost accountants came up and they said, hey, it's costing you money to put these engines back together and put them in cars. You can build a new engine for less.
Oh, okay.
So that's what they did from then on.
What did they do with the old engines? Just scrap them?
They threw them in the scrap wagon.
Ah.
And then those of us who wanted to buy a company car that had a worn out engine
Mm-hmm.
really took them back out of the scrap wagon, built them up on our own time,
Mm-hmm.
and put them back in the car.
Oh, okay.
That was countenanced by the powers that be, and as long as you don't use our time,
Mm-hmm.
or you can use some new parts.
Ah.
But I never had a new car until I retired. Because
I bet you had a lot of Nashes over there.
I did.
Yeah.
Always drove Nashes, but fleet cars.
Yeah. Did you have, is there a Nash that's your personal favorite?
I think a 48 Nash is probably
Yeah.
an Ambassador.
Car. Yeah, that's a beautiful car. That Ambassador engine was a pretty sturdy engine.
Very,
Yeah.
very.
That was a rugged, to me it seems like maybe the sturdiest six-cylinder engine ever built, because there were still plenty of them running around. And they
Right.
used them in trucks for a long time.
Right. One interesting project, somebody came up with the idea of boring one of these things, the 3.5-inch bore standard,
Mm-hmm.
bore them out to 3 5/8.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ran that on dynamometer, and it was a good engine.
Mm-hmm.
But V8 came along about that time, and everybody had to have a V8.
Oh, sure.
If it was 6-cylinder, well,
Now, what would that have yielded for cubic inches? Do you remember the 3 5/8?
I think it was around 270.
Oh, okay, yeah. I've got a formula at home that converts it.
Sure.
I'll have to take a look at that sometime. But yeah, 270 with, if they put the Le Mans dual carb setup, that would have been a pretty powerful engine.
Yep, I had one.
You had one, son
Sure.
of a gun.
Yeah, I built it up and put it in a 49, I think.
Wow. And did it go okay?
Oh, yes.
Did you ever test it for horsepower?
It's been so long, I don't remember
Sure.
what it was.
Yeah.
But it's slightly more than did the equivalent of going from 3.5-inch to 3 5/8.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that was carburation, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Wow. Gee, I wonder, well, at least now we know it can't be done. If anybody out there in Nashland wants to bore their engine out a little bit, you can get it up there.
yep, sure did.
Yeah. Now, after you worked in dynamometers, you went to,
The next thing was somebody decided that we were going to do this 100,000-mile test, and it was as I say, a 3-shift arrangement, and it was the use of the thought was to get 100,000 miles on the car as soon as possible,
mm-hmm.
and so they worked 3 shifts, and we had 4 cars on the road all the time.
Okay. And that was around the Nash test track?
No, that was on the open highway.
On the open highway?
But it was up through Madison, and then I've forgotten the other, but there was some back road in it.
Oh, okay, so
And
a good
then-
mix of driving.
Yeah.
Oh. Tell me about the Nash test track, because I don't know too much about it. I've seen plenty of pictures and film footage of it, but what were the different parts of it? Was it just a big oval, or?
No, there was an oval.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't a very high-speed track. I think 70 miles an hour was tops, and later you were hanging on. I mean, you were driving as fast as it would go. But the Nash Proving Ground was a piece of land owned by a guy by the name of Bob Sturts,
Mm-hmm.
who sort of planned the proving ground, sold it to the other powers that be, and then he owned the land. They bought the land, made a proving ground of it,
Mm-hmm.
and there were rough tracks.
Yeah. I think, was there a cobblestone area?
Yes, there was a cobblestone,
Okay.
and then twist tracks.
Okay. We're gonna talk about that a little more later
Oh,
on, I think that,
well.
yeah. And there were, it seems to me like there were like water pits too, or like
Oh yes,
ponds
yes.
or something?
Yeah, there were water pits
Yeah.
that you drove through. You drove, well, through the water pits, then through the twist track, then they had a course laid out.
Now, the water pit was for testing, was that for body sealing testing or testing for the electrical system?
No,
or
body
everything?
sealing.
Okay, all right. And the twist track, tell us about that.
Well,
What that was for.
The track was made so that it started off level,
Mm-hmm.
and then the front wheels turned one way, or the car was bent one way and bent the other, and you could actually hear the car creak
Oh, sure.
as it went through
Yeah, because
the
you're putting,
full twist on it.
yeah, torsional force on in
Right.
either direction.
You bet.
Now, what was the purpose of that test?
Durability.
Durability, okay. I can think of a number of English cars that if you did that, if you ran it over that, the doors would pop open.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and probably a few windshields would break too.
Yeah, well, in fact, I would occasionally take friends who came to visit over to the proving ground track
Mhm.
and show them the track.
Mhm.
And they always said, or not the visitors, but the people on the track said, don't take your car over, the car that you own over that twist track. Use one of the test cars.
Yeah. Yeah, so it really put a tremendous load on it. Huh?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And was that used year-round, that thing, or was
Oh,
it
yes.
only when a new, oh, okay.
Oh, no, they, okay, they took new cars always,
Mhm.
but then they didn't stay new very long.
Oh, I'll bet, yeah. So you started with Nash in 19